All in Sports Network. We love sports.
It is Monday, April 7th, right here on your Daily Fix for all things Texas Longhorns, brought to you by Rogue Sports Network. This is All in Horns. I'm Tanner Carlson. That is Jake Jimerson. And the national championship, college basketball, both men's and women's, is over. It is completed. It has probably been the best sports part of the calendar. It's hard to argue. From about mid-February, to about mid-April. You've got Super Bowl, you got the end of the NFL season, going into the height and the best exciting part of college basketball, both men's and women's, through the March Madness tournament. And we're going to wrap it up this weekend with the Masters at the PGA level. And so it's just a perfect sports portion of the calendar. Is always a good way to kind of wrap things up. But here's a look at my final bracket. There we go. Florida, national champions. Got that one predicted. 3 out of the 4. Final 4 had all of my Elite 8. Pretty good bracket for me this year. I got to admit, one of my better brackets. I'll pat myself on the back if no one else will, because I know you won't, Jake.
Oh no, I'm gonna pat you on the back. You did a great job in a year where it was really chalk and really boring. You did a really good job. Pat on the back to you.
Yeah, you're right. Everyone said it was chalk. I went pretty chalk, and that's exactly how it went. So
it's better than doing what I did and going pretty chalk, but not being able to bring myself to go enough chalk by putting a Michigan State in the final, by putting a St. John in the Final Four, and then getting bit by those. So my bracket it wasn't bad, but it ended up being that good. And I was pretty chalk. I chose the worst route of all of them.
Yeah. You went, the only route you could have taken that maybe would have been a little bit better was, honestly, no. There's not really another avenue that you could have gone. Maybe a Tennessee beating a Houston, but Houston played in the national championship.
Oh, so. You mean I had Tennessee beating Houston.
Oh, you did have.
And then losing to Duke.
That's right.
Yeah, I had Duke, Michigan State in the final. It blew up at the end for me. It was looking really good through the Sweet 16. I went with some fun picks. Next year, maybe I'm just going to have to – I'll take it more seriously, and next year is going to be craziness, and then it'll blow up, and then I'm just going to hate myself. So
you and I, we need a better bet in terms of who wins and loses next year to put some skin in the game, in my opinion. So we haven't been able to really talk, women's Final Four with the Texas game. We haven't talked men's Final Four. We haven't talked national championship. That's what this episode is going to be about. Jake and I, we took a brief vacation, went on a camping trip. It's a yearly camping trip he and I go on, and it was a successful trip. What happens at the camping trip stays at the camping trip, especially if you're a meat hook. And so, yeah. But anyway, took a little break, much needed break. I'm ready to get back into the action here. Final Four was a great Final Four, Jake. Possibly some of the best games of the entire tournament. And then a great national championship game. Can't really complain about the national championship game. Didn't know who was going to win with about a minute left in the game.
Yeah, I thought the national championship game was excellent. I was entertained from start to finish. Even when people were talking about the shoe, I thought it was great defense by both teams in a lot of this game. And the Final Four lived up to it. After really a fairly disappointing tournament all the way up to the Final Four, at least we got a great Final Four and a great national championship game. The Duke-Houston game kind of did the thing we talked about of not necessarily being a great game for most of it, but then having an incredible finish. Though, I still had fun. Granted, I was driving during it, but having that game on and listening to it and trying to watch it when I could was pretty entertained the whole game by just because it felt like Houston, I knew they were just staying in it. And you felt like that was going to pay off for them. Now, did I think they were going to come back and win it? No. But still, that game, obviously one of the best games of the tournament, one of the best games in Final Four history with just that final stretch.
Was that the largest comeback in Final Four history?
I'm not sure if I don't think it was the largest because the lead actually only ever got up to, I think it was 14 or 16.
I thought it was 16. I thought the number was 16, but that's still, for the Final Four, that's a significant amount of.
But I think it was like the third or fourth largest, but the 10 points in like 1 minute was.
Right. It was the 11-0 run with about a minute and a half remaining in the game for Houston to uh, leapfrog Duke in that game. But Jake, this was mentioned as one of the more likable Duke teams, a Duke team that is very rarely kind of easy to root for because of a Cooper Flag and a lot of the talent, the pro talent that they have on this team. However, it was really nice to see them collapse and fall. Like it just kind of brought back like, okay, Duke isn't inevitable because they kind of had that inevitable feel that, okay, they're shooing for a national championship game appearance at the very least. And for them to fall just short of that, not only one game short of it, but to have a 16-point comeback and be on the losing end of that with the future number one draft pick, 3 other lottery picks on that team, and for them just to come crumbling down in that fashion, it kind of brought America together again. I think it was a very united nation feel of Duke losing yet again in the tournament.
Yeah, everyone from being like, "Oh, this Duke team's more likable," to just pissing on their grave.
Yeah,
Me included.
The
And
moment it went final, all of social media, it was just like rejoice. We're
it was
back.
like an exhale of like, okay, I can stop lying about this now. It's like Cooper Flag was a lot of fun, but I still hate Duke.
Yeah,
was the final take, and just incredibly stupid play by Duke down the stretch too. Just not getting the ball to Flag to shoot the free throws, having I think it was Proctor shoot it, who's a 7% free throw shooter.
Right.
That's inexcusable coaching. Kelvin Sampson just completely outcoach Shire in this. It was a 14 was the largest lead. I thought it was 16, but it was 14. Also, I think the best part of this whole game, take everything else aside, is Duke fans blaming the officials for the loss, because that is like a Purdue fan. That is like a Purdue fan blaming an official. And over back, they scored one field goal in the last 10 minutes and 15 seconds of the game. One field goal.
But it was the over the back that lost in the game, Jake. You know that. You know that better than anyone.
Oh, it just hilarious. And it was even in foul calls. So I get why Duke fans thought the refs lost in the game, because they're used to having about a 10 to 15 foul advantage in their games. So,
and then on the flip side, so the Florida Auburn game, another comeback that was kind of overshadowed by the Houston comeback, but Florida comes back from 12 points down in their game against Auburn. They come back and win that game from UConn to Texas Tech to, I believe it was, and then I don't know if they trailed. No, yeah, and then to Auburn. Florida trailed at every single point in one of those games in the second half and came back and won those games. And then also in the national championship, it proved as well. They were trailing by, I believe it was as many as 11 or 12 in the national championship. And
12 in the national championship.
Yeah.
It was 9 to Auburn.
Yeah. 9 to Auburn, 12 in the national championship. But it was their MO. And I told you, Jake, right at halftime, I said, it's kind of Florida's MO to make these comebacks in the second half. That's exactly what happened. That Florida team, this team will go down as a more resilient team. And in a year where the tournament was very chalk and it was very top heavy, they were the heaviest of the top. And they rightfully deserve this national championship. Obviously, I was a believer in them very early on in the season. And I mean, they fought through a lot of adversity. But I got to tell you, Jake, I love the way that Houston plays. They just have to be able to capitalize and close games out. And I know they did a really good job, Elite Eight, Final Four, in terms of closing games out and scoring when they needed to. But it seemed like in this game, they took a lot of weird floaters in the paint that were contested and just, what seemed like low percentage shots to me. And I think they were trying to maybe bank on getting a foul call, and the referees just weren't really calling a ton of fouls like that in the national championship game.
Yeah, early in the second half and kind of all the way up to the middle of the second half, they just had a lot of scoring droughts. I mean, it looked like Texas.
Yeah.
I mean, they had like 3 or 4 multiple minute scoring droughts in the first 10 minutes of the second half, which it's just tough to beat. They had a chance to kind of put that game away early, and they went on long scoring droughts. Now, they held Florida to some scoring droughts during that, and that's why they still had a lead all the way up into late in this game, but they just couldn't put them away. And I was a little heartbroken for Houston because I thought they played a better game than Florida.
I mean, Walter Clayton did not show up. He did not play his best game offensively.
I think Houston shut him. I mean, that's just what Houston does. They take your best player, and they bought Cooper Flagg's the only best player they haven't been able to shut down. That's because it's Cooper Flagg.
Yeah, and he's the best player in the nation and will be the number one pick by a large margin going into the draft. But my thing with Houston, Jake, I texted you. I said this Houston team throughout the entire game against a very good Florida offense probably had, in what I counted, maybe 5, 6, even maybe 7 just perfect defensive sets. Perfect defensive sets where they weren't behind not 1 second. They were ahead and knew exactly where the ball was going, where Florida wanted to drop the play. They applied pressure on the perimeter, preventing passing lanes, just almost forcing, shot clock violations. And if they didn't force a turnover, it was a terrible shot that Florida had no chance in making. I mean, it happened multiple times. I just was like, this Houston team is nearly impossible. The intensity they play with on the defensive side of the ball is very difficult to overcome. And Florida, was fortunate enough to go to the free throw line and hit their free throws at the late stretch of that game. And that was really what won them that game. Was Walter Clayton made a couple of big plays, driving the lane, causing contact, getting the line, and they hit their free throws.
Yeah, they kind of found a way to claw it out. They trailed for, it had to have been like 80, 85% of this game at least.
Yeah. Minimum.
And I feel a little bit heartbroken for Houston just because this was their year. Florida's going to get another year in the future. This felt like the opportunity for Houston, as a veteran group, and they didn't pull it out right at the end. And the last possession is painful, just because you had Sharp, who's a really clutch player, just kind of have a panic moment. In a very bad situation to have a panic moment, but still an incredible. I mean, I don't think anyone doubts what this Houston basketball program has been the last 4 or 5 years. They've been to multiple Final Fours, a national championship game, came up just short against a Florida team who was 36-4 as a final record. In what would you say now? Granted, after day one of the tournament where the SEC didn't really lose any games, but they kind of struggled by only winning by 20 in some of the games. You said the SEC was overrated.
I asked the question if they were overrated.
I'm just saying things you said. I'm just saying them out loud. I'm just putting it out there. I'm just curious of your question. And all I'm doing is asking the question.
You literally just said, Tanner, you said this.
Yeah, you did. I did. You did say those things. Those things did come out of your mouth. And I was just curious of what your final thoughts were now that the tournament has ended.
Final thoughts were that the SEC lost the most amount of games of any conference in the tournament this year. No, they obviously showed up the way they were supposed to. They looked like the best conference in the tournament, and they played like the best conference in the tournament. And Florida, from the SEC, won the national championship. There can only be one winner in this thing. Everybody who makes the tournament ends their season with a loss, except for one, and that was Florida, who managed to escape that fate. And so, I mean, and I like this Florida team. I like the Auburn team a lot. I was worried about the body of work, but Arkansas, a 10 seed, they made a deep run. They were kind of the quote unquote Cinderella.
Should have been in the Elite Eight if they didn't choke that Tech game.
Yeah. And so, I mean, you had a team like Bama, Tennessee made a good run as well. I mean, you had half of the Elite Eight as SEC teams. So,
and half the Final Four, and then the winner. So,
and half the national championship. Did you know that?
And it was almost half the Sweet 16. I think they had 7.
Yeah, it was like
the
7
Sweet
of the
16.
16. Yeah,
really. and I'm not saying that as like a go SEC. I'm saying that as a really annoying the SEC decided to be this in basketball the year Texas joins. Granted, I don't think Texas would have done anything in any conference other than maybe the ACC this year.
And they probably
But
wouldn't have even made the tournament because they would have been in such a bad conference.
yeah, they would have been like fourth in the ACC, which doesn't put you in the tournament.
No.
But yeah, just a tournament that kind of got saved, in my opinion, by the Final Four in the national championship. Just that ending on such a great note of 3 great games and still having a couple good, really good Elite Eight games, having a couple good, every round had at least 1 or 2 really good games. You just didn't feel like you got enough madness. But for the Final Four in the national championship game to deliver and be really high level, awesome, and fun basketball games with crazy comebacks and all of that, I think that ultimately the tournament still delivered, and I'd give it like I had it like a C minus C grade, kind of after the Elite Eight, and it ends at like a B, a solid B for me.
Yeah, I think I can jump on board with a B minus at the very lowest.
Yeah,
B at
I
the
could
very
see a B
highest.
minus, but I think when you have that type of Final Four and that type of national championship game,
Yeah,
you
so
can't
looking at
you
it, the
can't
full
go
body of
below
work,
that.
you had your best teams in the country all year long. Your top 4 teams that everybody knew were the top 4 teams all year long meet up and play for a national championship in the Final Four, and that's really kind of best case scenario. Now, does that take away your upsets? Does that take away, your Cinderellas? Absolutely, it does, but, your Cinderellas being in Arkansas or, a Maryland, I think that's kind of where fans were kind of like, all right, like what's the worst team I'm rooting for here? Texas Tech, a 3 seed? Like what's the bottom feeder in this situation that we're rooting for? And so yeah, I think that was kind of, where a lot of fans lost their interest in terms of the madness, but ratings have never been higher because the fan bases for these teams that made it all the way through don't there's not bigger fan bases in the country that except for maybe a North Carolina or a Kentucky or whatever that made a deep run into this thing. Yeah, it's perfectly fine for me. I just wish that some of the games were closer. I thought a lot of the games were very well played. I thought the talent in this year's tournament was very, very good. I thought we saw good basketball being played. I just wish we would have seen closer games throughout the entire tournament. And that's really probably the only thing that I would knock on it, is that we didn't get a lot of buzzer beaters and we didn't get a lot of upsets.
And that's why it's a B. I mean, if you had a really good like B to B plus level, first 2 rounds, Elite Eight, Sweet 16, this is an A plus tournament with that type of Final Four and
Mhm.
national championship. I'm always going to weigh a little bit higher to to me the rounds that weigh the highest for what makes a great tournament. It's kind of that first round, second round, Final Four, national championship. The stuff in between always has a lot of blowouts because you do get more Cinderellas, and then they go, I mean, just get blown out the water, ugly. It's like 20-2
Right.
with like 10 minutes to go in the first half type game.
Right.
And so like the middle can always be a little shaky with just a few good games mixed in. So I thought the Sweet 16 late was a fairly normal uh type of amount of good games. The round 1 and 2 were a little bit weaker,
Yeah,
but you still
I'll
had
say
some really
this
good
about
ones.
the Sweet 16 and the Elite Eight. The only thing I'll say is that I felt like they could have been closer games because there weren't the upsets in the first weekend.
Yeah, and that was disappointing because we kept going, well, yeah, there have been 10 upsets, but the Sweet 16 is going to be great.
Right.
Okay, now we're really down to it. These Elite Eight games are going to be great, and there was like two of them that were good.
Yeah.
And
Right.
then finally, it was like, okay, the final 4 games are going to be great, and then
And
they
they
were
were.
great, and
And
then
they
the
were.
national championship
Yeah.
was great, and so ultimately, still got enough of an itch. I do hope we get a little more madness next year.
And I
But
think the conversation needs to go away. I'm extremely tired of the NIL transfer portal ruining college sports. It is just that way for the people who are going to be pessimistic about there not being upsets or anything like that. But the year before that, when there was a ton of upsets, or the year before last year, whenever there was an FAU and a San Diego State, and there was like 2 8 seeds in the Final Four and a 2 seed, and I don't even think a 1 seed made it to the Final Four. That only happened like 2 years ago, ladies and gentlemen. Of like,
But NIL just started this year.
NIL just had an effect on the game this year. Yeah. So that's where I'm like, okay, let's draw the line. We're not even looking at big picture. We're looking at a single chapter. It's not like this hasn't happened before. It happened in 2008, way before NIL, where there was 4 number 1 seeds that made the tournament. No one was really complaining then. It was the first time it had ever happened, but no one was ever really complaining. They're kind of like, all right, we got a badass Final Four coming up.
And you look back at the first round, there were several upset like teams that were hanging in there, but just couldn't get that little final push.
And we never had that heroic moment. I think that for me, we never had a Danny or a Goki or Golke from Oakland. We never had, a Steph Curry from Davidson, a 10 seed Davidson team that just, we never had that heroic moment of a Jimmer Fredette from at a Butler or at a Xavier or anything like that. We didn't have one of those smaller schools make a little bit of a run.
Yeah, McNeese was probably, it was probably the biggest Cinderella of the whole tournament, and that was kind of a pretty highly picked one, and they fizzled out after the first round because that game was over very quickly. In the second round. But you still had some great games. You lack those, but to me, you're still going to see them because you look at a lot of the games that happened in the first round, and there were teams that were hanging in there, still in it in the second half, and you're like, oh, this is the game. You feel the momentum shifting, the crowd getting behind the underdog, and then they just couldn't hit the big shot. And there's going to be years where the ball does bounce the right way. It's basketball. Sometimes it's weird. This year just worked out in the favorites. I'm not worried about just it's not going to become like and this isn't meant to be a shot, but it's not going to become what the women's tournament has always been, where it is just chalk. Like I saw there was one bracket that was 1 game away from being perfect this year on the women's bracket challenge. And that never happens on the men's side. And I have no doubt that we're going to continue to see upsets in the future.
Jake, do you have an opinion or any comment on the Maryland coaching situation with Kevin Willard? Do you have a comment with Buzz Williams going to Maryland, or the new replacement at Texas A&M, Bucky McMillan from Samford? I don't know what it is with A&M. I do want to get this off my chest, but with the country bumpkin names, I don't understand what it is with them hiring Buzz, Jimbo, Bucky. There's got to be another one that I'm missing somewhere along there. But like, is it just a name thing? Their boosters are just like, their donors are just like, get the guy with the most hillbilly name that we can, and he'll be our guy. He'll be a great fit for the culture.
Yeah, man, they just I'm trying to think of what the next name will be whenever, Mike Elko or definitely early on the baseball side, whenever their next top, one of the big 3 sports coaches gets fired, what name they're going to go for. It's going to be like Ernie or just some random
Billy Joe,
Billy Bob.
Billy Bob.
Billy Bob Thornton's going to become their minister of culture.
Well, he is a hell of a coach when it comes to Hollywood, Friday Night Lights, or what have you.
That is true. But yeah, no, I mean, my only comment would be, I don't blame Buzz Williams. I mean, I wouldn't want to be part of a cult, so I can't blame anyone for wanting to get out of a cult. Also, for him, it was the perfect time to get the hell out because they were not going to be good next year. They were just losing that entire roster, basically. And A&M talks really loud about basketball on social media and stuff, but they don't show up to their games unless they're playing Texas or a top-ranked team. So it probably not a great place to be coaching basketball.
Yeah.
And then just getting turned. My other take would be A&M getting turned down by everyone they wanted to hire. Now having to spend hiring the Stanford coach is this great hire. I don't think he's a bad coach, but if you're A&M, for you to be giving him his first big break in a power
In the
conference
SEC?
coaching, it's a huge risk,
Yeah, big one.
to say the least.
Samford was not a tournament team this year by any crown, NIT, anything. They did not.
Really, Bucky Ball became famous because they almost beat Kansas last year.
They almost beat Kansas last year, and that was the only his one shining moment was almost winning in a tournament.
And they were fun. They score a lot of, they scored like
Yeah.
89 points in that KU game. I think they lost like 93-89. They're a high octane offense. They get a bunch of points, bunch of
Again,
assists.
happened 2 years ago, but yeah.
But well, even this year they were like a top 15 scoring team. But that's a gigantic risk and not the hire they wanted to make. They wanted to bring in Chris Beard because
I think it's a very low ceiling, very medium, or very low floor, very medium ceiling for his hire.
Yeah, that's which is kind of perfect for that
A&M.
program. But
Now, what about the Kevin
I
Willard situation, Jake? Did you feel any type of way about Kevin Willard?
One more
Maryland?
thing on
Yeah.
the A&M thing.
Yeah.
I just would have found it so funny if they hired Chris Beard after doing all their Bible thumping on Twitter when Schloss left them and being like, you know what, that's fine. We want a guy of high moral integrity to lead our program because, Schloss is just not a good guy because he left us.
Yeah.
And then let's just go get the dude. And they'll be like, well, the charges got dropped. Go read the police report. They saw bruises. They saw bite marks.
Yeah, you can drop a report. The evidence still is there, very clear as day of the damage that he did.
So but funny they got turned down by him. But the Kevin Willard, he handled it in a terrible way. But it also seems like Maryland has a lot of instability going on in that program. They had an interim AD. They, for some reason, believe they should be a football school, is what it kind of sounds like. I don't understand why they aren't just pumping all their resources into basketball. I've always considered Maryland more. Their environment, their basketball arena this year was incredible. No one cares about Maryland football. I don't understand why they would pump more resources into football than into basketball. I could understand a coach being upset at that. I think I get it from the fans' perspective being upset. I get it from the players, though I don't really think I've heard anything about the actual players being upset at him. So it's mainly just fans being upset the way he went out.
And probably the athletic department.
Maybe they should direct some of their frustrations at the athletic department. I don't know all the inner workings. I'm not into Maryland stuff like I am Texas. I don't care that much, but just from the outside looking in, I'm not saying Kevin Willard handled this well. He could have handled it better. He could have handled it more mature, just like a coach would ask of their player.
Yeah.
But at the same time, it seems like Maryland's athletic department has a lot of issues of itself.
Yeah, Maryland as a football school in the same conference as Ohio State, Michigan, Oregon, USC. Name another Big Ten football program that's better than Maryland. You'd probably get about 90% of the conference before you even thought about Maryland as a competitive program. Indiana is
I was about to say Indiana now just because of what they just did. But
yeah, no, I completely agree. It was probably
Maryland could win a national title in basketball. It's not that crazy to think of them being able to build their program up enough to do that.
For one special year, absolutely. If Butler can make a national championship
if Houston
and nearly win
can do it, and that's not a shot at Houston. It's not a shot at Butler. It's just saying in basketball, it's much, especially in the NIL era, just because there's less players.
Yeah,
it's just a math thing.
And like 80% of the country goes into the transfer portal, so you have a chance to rebuild every year. So, but anyway. Well, Jake, that's going to do it for this episode. Tomorrow's episode, we are going to dive much deeper into women's basketball, how their season ended in the Final Four. We are fully aware of that. We just wanted to get this out, get it loaded up for Monday night following the national championship game. You can watch this to start your Tuesday morning off if you're already in bed. And then we will also have an afternoon episode dropping Tuesday as well. So you might get to double dip a little bit on the All in Horns boys. And so pause. Anyway,
Phrasing.
phrasing. That is going to do it for today's episode. And yeah, we'll come out with another episode for tomorrow. And then for Wednesday, for the rest of this week, we'll drop these episodes at noon, Tuesday through Friday. We'll drop them at noon. And then our new schedule basically for the baseball, softball season will be Monday through Friday at noon. We'll keep it pretty consistent from here on until College World Series starts up. We might want to start doing some immediate reactions, maybe even in conference tournament play. But we'll get to that point when we get there. So for Jake Jimerson, I'm Tanner Carlson. This has been your daily fix for all things Texas Longhorns right here on All in Horns. And as always, ladies and gentlemen, hook 'em.
All in Sports Network. We love sports.